I recently got a new piercing, but hang on, not your typical kind. I had been thinking about this type of piercing for so long because I thought it looked really cool. Although I never thought I'd actually go through with it because I've always been afraid of piercings. But what changed my mind was my friend Jessica, who got hers pierced and convinced me that it didn't hurt and that it's totally worth it. So I ended up going with her to the same salon she'd gotten hers done in, and I can't even begin to explain the amount of adrenaline I felt. I just couldn't believe I was actually doing it. But of course, I made Jessica promise not to tell anyone about it because the truth is, I was kinda embarrassed about it, especially as my parents are super religious and traditional. You see, I've always been the black sheep of the family. In my opinion, life is all about having fun, and we don't need to be so uptight about things. This has, of course, led to a lot of fights with my parents who totally don't believe in living life the way I do. It's not my fault, though. I mean, seriously, they are just impossible to deal with. Can you believe that this one time my dad grounded me for a whole day just because I got a fake tattoo on my arm? Anyway, you guys must understand that when you have parents like that, your life becomes kind of like a prison and you just want to break free. That was actually what encouraged me even more to go ahead and get a nipple piercing. It's not like they'd ever find out about it, right? Well, that didn't end up being the case. Let's just say things didn't exactly go according to plan. In fact, pretty much the worst case scenario that could ever happen happened. And it ended up getting me in deep, deep trouble. Okay, so here's the deal. That first day that I got the piercing, things were all good. It hurt a little bit, but I was fine with it. I think I was too excited and just blocked out the pain. But the following day, something felt terribly wrong, and that's when I began to seriously regret this stupid thing I'd done. I woke up that morning to unbearable pain in my breast. It felt like my skin had been cut wide open, and every time I touched the piercing, I screamed in pain. I frantically called Jessica to ask her what I should do, and she said that this was just normal and that it had happened to her too. You just have to be patient. It will hurt for about a week, but then you'll feel fine again, she assured me. So then I tried my best to ignore the pain and just carry on with life. However, I couldn't ignore it for long because pretty quickly it started to swell up really bad. I called Jessica again and told her that I wanted to take it out, but she warned me that it wasn't a good idea to remove it as I'd be left with a horrible scar that would never go away. She told me to chill out and said the pain was normal and that all I needed to do was clean it so that it didn't get infected. So that's what I did. I started cleaning it every couple of hours with soap and water. The cold water made it feel better, and I used some ice too. Why are you running to the bathroom every couple of minutes? My mom stopped me as I was running to clean it. Well, I think I ate something bad, and I'm not feeling great, I told her. Because I'd replied so quickly, my mom didn't think much of it and told me to drink some tea and feel better soon. I hurried back into the bathroom to take a look, and it seemed like things were getting even worse. It was beyond painful now. In that moment, I realized that asking Jessica for advice was useless. She had no idea about the pain I was going through, and I needed someone who actually understood what was going on to tell me what to do. But who? I mean, this was obviously a big secret that only Jessica knew about, and there was no way I was going to ask my parents for help. They would totally kill me. The only thing I could do was go online and read all about nipple piercings, and to my complete and utter shock, everything I was doing was in fact wrong. Nothing Jessica had said was right. My pain was not normal. I shouldn't have used soap, and I shouldn't have left it like this. I was stuck. I couldn't go to a doctor because then my parents would definitely find out. There was nothing else for it. I decided to take care of it myself. The first thing I needed to do was remove it. I just had to. I went back to the bathroom so I wouldn't make a mess in my room. The pain was getting worse and worse. I took my bra off and started looking for a way to remove it. The skin was so swollen by that point that it was hard to even see the piercing. The more I moved it, the more pain I felt, to the point where I started silently crying. I pushed and jiggled the piercing harder and harder as I was trying to unscrew it, and the more I did, the more the skin got damaged. Now there was basically a cut that had blood pouring out of it. It was seriously the worst feeling I'd ever felt in my life. I got blood all over my hands, but I wouldn't give up on trying to remove it. But then suddenly I started seeing black spots, and that's when I blacked out. I don't know how much time passed before I regained consciousness and found myself lying on the bathroom floor. I heard a loud knock on the door. "Sabrina, are you okay?" my mom said in a loud voice. Yeah, I'm fine, Mom. My stomach is still a little upset, that's all." I heard my mom standing silently on the other side of the door. A few seconds later, she said, "Are you sure you're okay? Your voice doesn't sound right." "Mom, I'm okay. Just give me some privacy, please," I shouted, which finally got her to leave me alone. But then the sharp pains in my breast reminded me that I still had a big problem. When I looked down, there was blood everywhere. I couldn't believe how I'd gotten myself in this situation. I sat on the bathroom floor, sobbing. The piercing was not coming out, and I'd hurt myself so badly already. The only option I had at that moment was to leave it alone and wait for the following day when I could go and see if the piercing salon could help me. I woke up the next morning in even more pain. The cut was infected and swollen, but I was just praying that someone at the salon would help me. When I went there, they asked to see it, so I went into a little room and a woman with gloves checked it. She looked worried and she'd barely even touched it. "I'll be right back," she said. The woman came back with her boss, and it seemed like she had a change of attitude. "We can't help you," they both said. Then they went on to explain that I'd signed a contract that specifically stated that the salon is not responsible for any health issues I might suffer from after the piercing. I couldn't believe it. Who on earth would help me then? I was seriously fed up and in so much pain that I just burst out crying in front of them. The woman apologized for being unable to help me and said that I should really go see a doctor. She also gave me a cream that would apparently help calm down the infection. She said that if I applied it every couple of hours, things should get better. I thanked her and went back home, disappointed and clueless about what I should do next. The only thing on my mind was that my parents must never find out about it, no matter what happened. For the next few days, I kept applying the cream from the salon, and I also tried some home remedies that were supposed to help. To my surprise, the infection I had was looking much, much better, even though the pain was still there. I decided to keep doing what I'd been doing to really allow it to heal. Then I'd try taking the piercing out again. However, throughout the next few days, I began noticing weird changes in my health. I became very tired and had no energy to do anything. And later, I started noticing that my body temperature was rising. Sure enough, when I checked it, I had a fever. That day, I couldn't go to school, and so I stayed in bed. My mom came in and asked what was wrong, so I told her that I had a fever and that I was going to stay in bed for the day. Being the suspicious mom she was, she came closer and put her hand on my forehead to check. When she did, she realized that I wasn't lying, and she even looked concerned. "We should go to the doctor. You've been feeling sick for the last few days, and I'm worried," she said. No, Mom, there's no need," I told her. But of course, there was no way out of it. My mom always got her way, and I was in too much pain to argue, so I just went with her. When we arrived, the doctor ran the usual checkup, but he could not determine why I had a fever. He told us that something seemed off and that it would be better if they ran some blood tests first. I was so annoyed at that point because I was feeling so horrible and all I wanted was to go back home and rest. But of course, there was no way my mom would take no for an answer. I went ahead and did the tests, and finally I was able to go back home. The very next day, though, things took a turn for the worse. Mom's phone rang and it was the doctor. He told her that he recommended I go straight to the emergency room as soon as possible. That phone call turned my day upside down. My parents were freaking out and they immediately started thinking of the worst case scenarios. As for me, I just sat there and thought, could my life get any worse? I had a fever and I was in so much pain from the piercing that I was still unable to remove, and now this? When we arrived at the hospital, I went into the room alone and waited for the nurse to arrive so that I could explain everything from the beginning. As soon as the nurse came in, I burst into tears and I told her everything. It was such a relief, to be honest. Shortly after, a doctor came in and removed the piercing. It was the best feeling ever to finally get rid of that thing. A few minutes later, they treated my infection and gave me antibiotics for it. They said that it was pretty bad and that I needed to look after it carefully to avoid any future infections. I walked out of the emergency room feeling tender, but much, much happier. My parents came running over to me as soon as they saw me, panic written across their foreheads. My mom looked at me and said, "So, when's it due?" I just stared at her, confused. "What your mom means is it true? Are you pregnant?" my dad added. Pregnant? Then my mom explained. When they'd asked the doctor what was wrong with me, he said it was best I be the one to tell them, not him. So they just assumed I was pregnant. I couldn't believe it. I actually laughed as I told them, of course I wasn't pregnant, but then I had to explain the real reason. I was so embarrassed and just told them that I'd stupidly gotten a piercing in a private part of my body and that it had got infected and that honestly, I didn't want to talk about it. My parents both turned a bright shade of red and I could see they were both equally embarrassed and relieved. Relieved that I wasn't pregnant, but too embarrassed to probe any further. Was I off the hook though? Nope. My parents weren't going to let me off that easily. They proceeded to ground me for 3 months. And as for Jessica, well, let's just say we aren't friends anymore. After I told her what happened in the emergency room, she actually laughed and seriously didn't care that I'd been in so much pain. Then she said, okay, so how about we get our belly buttons done next? And that was where I drew the line and decided it was probably better if we ended our friendship there. Did you like my story? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more.